Today, we're looking at a pink ink by Herbin Rose Tendresse. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. There's timestamps down below so that if you want to skip around, you can, but if you got the time, check out the entire video. You can follow me over on Instagram, and don't forget to subscribe. To make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I then put the ink into this Pilot vanishing point with a medium nib, used it to write for a day and to take my notes for this video. I standardized my first writing sample by using Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper on all of the tests that I do. I do use other papers, and some of those will show up later in the video. Now, let's look at the writing sample. I picked this ink up in sample form, so it came in a vial like this. And to keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's take a look at the Clairfontaine. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is quite a bit lighter than the stub. With no feather spread, halo sheen, it does offer quite a bit of shading throughout this writing. 11 seconds to dry. Medium is the same tone as the extra fine. With no feather spread, halo sheen, still quite a bit of shading here in the writing. 12 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both do show some color variation left to right, and we do get it in the writing. Tomoe River. No bleeding, almost no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, no spread. It has halo. Almost the entire thing is haloed, so when people really ask about what is halo, let's try and adjust this. See if we can come way in here. When people ask what is halo, it's those tiny darker lines that seem to be, stay in focus. Just switch this over to macro and see what happens. See if we can get it with macro. There we go. So what we get is those darker lines around the outside are what halo is. Not getting as much light because of where I'm at now. I'm out of that, back to normal. Having a little trouble with focus because of the color here. So that's what halo is. No sheen, no shade. Wow, lost my spot with all that. Extra fine is quite a bit lighter than the stub. With no feather spread, halo sheen. I want to say no shade is very little here, almost none. There are a couple tiny spots of it. 15 seconds to dry. Medium is about the same tone as the extra fine, with no feather spread, halo sheen, but shading definitely shows up here. When you look at the word quick, look at the word brown, the word fox, it's there. 18 seconds to dry. The scrubby of the extra fine shows no color variation. The medium does show some, and that's about how it worked in the writing samples. Rhodia. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is lighter than the stub. With no feather spread, halo sheen, it does offer some nice shading spots. Look at brown, how it's going lighter to darker to lighter. 12 seconds to dry. Medium is the same tone as the extra fine. With no feather spread, halo sheen, a very nice shading. 14 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both shows color variation, and we do get it in the writing. I agree with Vita that I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down and immediately put it into water for 10 to 15 seconds. And this is a true pink dye making this ink. It is fleeing from the water. All the way up, there's almost nothing being left behind. And the one on the right, I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water. And if not marked, I would not be able to tell the difference between these two filter papers, which makes me feel there's going to be no resistance for this ink. Resistance tests are done to see how well this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it might be to clean from your pen. I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, I would not use this in a note-taking situation if I wanted to go back and highlight because of the blowout that's occurring in the lowercase h. Now that's not a shocker based on the chromatographies or what's happening here with water, where water with only 30 seconds is completely removing this from the page. Pen flush does everything that water does. You can't do more than remove all of it. The 1/3 bleach solution also, surprisingly, completely removes it from the paper. I test ink viscosity or flow by using a tilt test, and I'll link that somewhere here. And for the inks I've tested, I have found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Put the data onto a bell curve or standard deviation for it to be easily understood. Herbin Rose Tendresse has a viscosity of 2.33, making it normal. To find my average dry times, I use my writing samples, and for the inks I've tested, I found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with the realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Herbin Rose Tendresse has an average dry time of 14 seconds, making it still normal. Instead of finding inks that look like Herbin Rose Tendresse, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. Originally I wanted blue, but then I thought maybe a lighter in that spectrum, so I went for turquoise. I chose Colorverse Gravity Wave. The second writing sample is done on yellow Rhodia, P. Berger, and White Lines paper. Here we're looking at yellow Rhodia paper, not looking at performance, really looking for tone changes, which is what I was very interested in here because it's such a light pink. Now, as a tone, it does seem to get a little bit lighter with the yellow backdrop, but it somehow is easier to read because it gets a little lighter but becomes a bit more of a red for having that yellow paper. Not that this is the ink you would be using in that professional setting, but it's nice to know. P. Berger, it's a student grade French rule paper. It does have some bleed spots that occur, very minor with the stub, very minor with the extra fine, not with the medium, surprising. Not too bad, though the 1.1 you couldn't use the back of the page, but the others you certainly could. It doesn't touch the paper underneath. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is a lot lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 2 seconds to dry. Medium is just a little bit darker than the extra fine, not as dark as the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 4 seconds to dry. Now the scrubby for both show a tiny bit of color variation, although it's not showing up in the writing. Last up is White Lines paper, with very minor bleeding again on the stub, nowhere near coming through the paper. It does lead to a minor bit of ghosting. No problems with the extra fine or the medium. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is quite a bit lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen. There is spots of shading that's going on here. Look at the word quick. It starts much darker, gets a little bit lighter, it gets a little darker again. The word the word the is certainly darker than the word over. 4 seconds to dry. Now, medium is the same tone as the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen. The shading shows itself much better here than it did here, so it does shade, especially look at the word fox. Look at the word quick and the word over. It really is there. 6 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both shows some color variation, and we do get it in the writing, and that's what I have for writing samples. So what do I think of Herbin Rose Tendresse? This is, in general, a dark enough pink that you can easily read it. It's very well performing, very gentle on the pen, a nice, well-behaved, good pink ink. What nib and pen will give the best writing experience with this ink? While it can shade, I find the tone to be most pleasant from a wet pen. Although I lose the shading, I find the tone is nicest to look at on the paper. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, and if it's your first time here, I'm going to remind you, if you enjoyed it, subscribe. Thanks for watching.